Welcome back once again. Thanks for coming back. So last time we covered somewhat briefly what I'm calling Bible word study tools. Right, we looked at these in Bible Hub. We also looked at these in Logos. In Bible Hub, we also looked at searching. We looked at using the Concordance tool. We looked at how to glean information from lexical entries, namely that's BDB for Hebrew and Thyers for Greek. So today we're going to continue with another somewhat brief video, sort of on the other side of word studies, and that is the interlinear. Now the term is pretty self-explanatory. It's where two texts intersect on a line. So to get started, let's just go over to the Greek interlinear on Bible Hub here. So the first thing to know right off the bat is which Greek text this is using. So if we want to get there, we're just going to go to, we can go to any Greek New Testament book. I'll just pick Matthew and get here by clicking the interlin. And again, that's short for interlinear. So again, which text is this using? Well, if you notice down here, it's telling us that it's using the Nestle 1904 text, okay, which you see right there. The variants from each of the other texts, again, TR is Textus Receptus, Robinson Pierpont, Westcott Hort, and then the NE, NA variants there, as well as the SBL, even though I don't think the SBL is actually on here. But nevertheless, so again, textual variants will be listed in different types of braces based on whichever variant it is. So for example, if we go from here in Matthew 1:1 to John chapter 3, and we go to verse 13, okay? So you'll see that the last 5 words in the text here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are actually in these sort of little semi-angled arrow brackets, right? The legend at the bottom tells us what text they're found in. That is the RP, or Robinson Pierpont. This means that these words are representative not of the oldest manuscripts, but of the Byzantine majority text. So that means the oldest text of John 3:13 that we have contain roughly this up to here. This phrase right here is found in the later Byzantine texts. All right, so keep an eye out for these different braces. Again, here along the bottom you can see, or you can click to see the legend once again. But yeah, so keep an eye out for that, just because it'll point out little different things as far as which different text you're looking at, and it's quite likely that if you look at John 3:13 in many Bibles, so if we go to the parallel Bible, again, what we saw was who is in heaven, right? Well, if you go to the King James, which is in heaven, New King James, who is in heaven. But if you look at the NASB, the Son of Man, it doesn't have who is in heaven. So if you're reading this, especially if you're using this interlinear alongside your personal Bible that you're studying with, it's quite likely that you will see these in brackets here in the text that's not actually in your English translation. Again, just be aware of that. Now, just looking at this screen, we've already covered much of the navigation, but to drill down to a word, you don't actually click on the Greek word itself. As you can tell right here, that's not a clickable object. Instead, you click the transliterated word above it, right here, to go to the concordance. So this will show me oranon, right? It's the Greek word occurring 43 times. It links to the Greek word oranos, which is essentially heaven, sky, the heavens, etc. in Greek, occurring hundreds of times. So if we go back to our interlinear, again, clicking the transliterated Greek word will take us to the concordance. Clicking the Strong's number will take us to the word study page. We could also click the little E here to go to the concordance as well. The E, I think, stands for Englishman's. Yeah, Englishman's Greek Concordance. We looked at the concordance last time, so we're not going to rehash that yet still once again. But this right here is probably how I have done word studies in Bible Hub the most. I'm in a passage, I drill into the interlinear of the passage, I look at the word in question, I select the Strong's number, and I go deeper into the word study portion of that particular word. If we go back to the interlinear, you'll notice again we have transliteration above the word, we have the word itself, we have the supplied interlinear literal translation below that, and then beneath that we have the part of speech, right? So take the word chi at the very beginning right here, C-O-N-J, conj, that means it's a conjunction. Next we have the word oudes, right? The adj, that is adjective, and the nms for parsing sake means nominative, that is the Greek subject case here, masculine, singular. Now hovering over this, you will get that breakdown. This one you could probably assume V is verb, 3 maybe it's third person, S singular, but what is this RIA, right? Maybe that's not very intuitive. Again, hover over it and it tells you R is perfect, I is indicative, and A is active, right? Now, over time, you'll get used to seeing these. Some are more intuitive than others. You know, this one, noun, genitive, masculine, singular. That one makes sense. RIA maybe doesn't make as much sense. APA, right? So again, hover over it and you'll see it's an aorist active participle. Okay, so again, these are the parts of speech. These are very important, especially if you can't recognize what part of speech it is by looking at the word itself. This is very, very important as you start getting into word and syntax studies. At any rate, if we click on one of these, we get this whole parsing abbreviation here. So now we can scroll through, we can see the part of speech, the voice, the case, the number, the person, the tense, the mood, and so on. So again, very helpful. And especially if you use this primarily on mobile, you can't hover over here to see it. So just make sure that you tap it and go through and figure out which one it is. Okay, so now let's head over to Genesis 1 and go to verse 3. Okay, you'll see that it's largely the same thing, right? Just remember that Hebrew goes right to left, not left to right, right? So here in Genesis 1:3, we see Vayomer Elohim Yehiur veYehiur. Notice, of course, again, reading right to left, that the English follows the Hebrew word order, right? It doesn't say, and God said, let there be light, and there came to be light, right? It says, and said God, because this follows the Hebrew word order. Hebrew is largely verb first. So we will have the verb before the subject. Hebrew is generally considered a VSO, so it's a verb, subject, object language. Also, adjectives will be listed after the noun. So, of course, in English, when we're describing a noun, we would say a large black bear, right? I give you two adjectives first. So, large, black, bear. But in Hebrew, you would say a bear that is large and black. So the adjectives in Hebrew would follow after the noun. Once again, the same thing pretty much applies to studying these words. So if we pick the word ur, if we click the transliteration, this is going to give us the concordance. So it's going to tell us all the different places that this word appears, right? Okay. If we click the Strong's number, however, it will take us to the word study tools. So now we get the word ur. It's a noun meaning light, right? And we can go and get the lexical information here from the BDB, the Brown Driver Briggs. So that's still pretty much the same thing. Once again, we can click the E, go back to concordance again. The big difference here, because the parts of speech and the breakdown here does still apply, but it's different, right? Obviously, Hebrew has its own terminology, so we're not here looking at moods and aorist tenses and so on. We're looking at, right here, we have verb, kal, that's what this is, kal, imperfect, jussive, third person masculine singular, right? So once again, hover over it to get a breakdown, or click it to go to this sort of parsing help here. It can be quite a bit to look through. This is where I would suggest that you do a Control F and find. Or if you're on a mobile device, if you're using your mobile browser, you may want to use the find in page option and search for whatever it is specifically that you're wanting to do here. Now, the last thing to mention for interlinears, and this goes for Hebrew and Greek, is don't just default to letting the English translation here, right, replace your word study and your time spent combing through the lexicons. Okay, you can't just let this decide what it is. So this obviously is going to be a very literal translation applied here in the interlinear. But you still need to be able to drill down. You still need to be able to study through the words themselves, because this is still a translation. At the end of the day, the whole reason that you're digging in and doing word studies is because a translation into your own language cannot convey every nuance of the word, right? There's often background, there's often historical context, literary context, grammatical context. There's a lot of different ideas into words that may get translated into only one or two words in English that really need, like, a whole volume of a dictionary's entry to really explain what it means. So again, just make sure that you're not letting this just coming in and seeing um, a given word and saying, oh, well, that's obviously just what this word means, right? I mean, there is strength to word studies, even if only for your own edification. And this last point, it really relates to something that I feel I should say, even though this doesn't really pertain directly to using Bible Hub or Logos. And that is, you should take time to learn the biblical languages, right? You really should. Everyone. I don't care, young, old, if you find yourself academically inclined or not. It really doesn't matter. Anyone and everyone should take the time to learn the biblical languages for themselves. Um, Whatever that looks like, right? However long it takes, it's never too late to start learning, right? No tool, like this interlinear tool is great, the word study tools are great, but no tool is a substitute for learning how to read and handle the biblical languages for yourself. But with that said, I think that pretty well covers the interlinear basics of navigation, at least. So I have included a couple resources in the description for this video that I think are pretty good in that regard, specifically if you're looking to learn the biblical languages for yourself. One last thing on the interlinear. So to navigate, again, you select the passage, the verse, and so on. You can go left and right here to go to different verses. You can use these arrows as well. You can drop this down once again and pick a different verse. And if you wanted to see more than just one verse, if you want to get a little bit more into it, um, maybe you're wanting to see it more than one verse at a time, you go here. So click for chapter, and that takes you to the interlinear for the whole chapter. In my case right now, that's Exodus 7. And this right here brings me to a point that kind of relates to, it's actually why I went to Exodus 7, that kind of relates to what I was saying about not letting just the simple definition here, the English word here, replace your word study. Because here in Exodus 7:10, we have Aaron's staff, right? Um, and actually it's before that. That's the staffs of the servants of Pharaoh. But Aaron's staff, he throws it down, right, and it becomes a snake. Some people would say cobra, right, or it becomes a serpent, and so on. Uh, but honestly, this is kind of a fascinating study in and of itself, because we expect to find a serpent, yeah, like in the garden, right? But if we look at this word, we find, oh wait, dragon, sea monster, right? Hey, where's the verse from Genesis where the serpent was in the garden and it lied to Eve and tried to deceive her into thinking that she should take from the fruit? And where's the serpent here? Um, and you can read through a lot more here. Sea monster, dragons from the book of Job. What is this talking about? So this is not the same word. The word from the garden incident, if you will, with the quote serpent is nachash. This is tanin. Now this has led to different theories. Some have said it's still just the word for serpent. There's really nothing special about it. Personally, I'm of the opinion that the reason it uses this word is because it's more likely referring to a crocodile. I believe this is part of the intentional encounter with Moses and Aaron going before Pharaoh. The whole crocodile incident, probably because there was essentially a crocodile god in Egypt that was being worshipped, and just like all the other plagues are judgments on different gods of Egypt, so this too was a judgment on the crocodile god of Egypt of the Nile. But either way, again, he throws his staff down and it turns into not a nachash or serpent like in the garden. It turns into a tanin, a sea monster, a sea dragon, that sort of thing. Could it mean serpent? Sure. Could it still be some form of serpent or snake? Sure. Um, but personally, I don't think that's actually the point. So again, don't just let this English definition stand in the way of your study. Actually go in and make sure you're studying. So with that, let's go back to Logos again. Let's close this out. Hello, Logos, my old friend. I've come to access you again. Anyway, sorry. So let's open up our. Oops, I meant library. Let's open up our Greek Interlinear. Okay, so let's go to Matthew 5:17 once again. Oops, I typed that wrong. Nope. Maybe I should do a video on typing skills. So again, this may look a little cluttered. You know, you can expand this, contract it, whatever. So in Greek, we're back to left to right, right? Matthew 5:17 right here. So just kind of a description here. Once again, this is the verse number. The Greek word is here. This is going to be the manuscript form, right? This is what actually appears in the Greek text. That's how it's written. Um, Now these two are the same. That's a mu, that's a mu, so they're the same, right? But these you can see are spelled differently. Well, it's because this is the manuscript form and this is the lemma. Okay, so you can see here when I drop down this, so this button right here is the interlinear. That's the interlinear button that turns it on and off, right? It's an interlinear toggle, I should say. And we can look at the check boxes that are checked. So first is manuscript, that's the top. Greek lemma. This is the word form that you would look up if you wanted to see this word in the lexicon, because it's not going to be spelled this way. It's not going to be spelled in every single possible way. It's going to be based on its Greek lemma. Morphology, that's what this is. So if you remember the part of speech, if it's masculine, feminine, what case it is, and so on, that's going to be listed in here. The English lexical value, so this is how the primary definition will be listed in the lexicon. And right here, I can turn on the Lunida entry and or the Strong's number. Right, so Lunida is, you can think of it kind of as a different numbering and cataloging system from Strong's. I kind of like it better. It's become the more scholarly standard for the Greek New Testament, but nevertheless, you can toggle those on and off as well. So again, we have the Greek word may, BNTN. What does that mean? Right? Well, again, it's the morphology. I've included a link to the Logos morphology list in the description, but in short, B is an adverb, N is negative, T is particle, and again, N is negative. So this is an adverb that is a negative particle. So we would find below uh, the lexical form of not. And if we toggle on a English literal translation, we see do not, right? Do not. So turn that back off. So again, that's what it is. That's what those stand for. I'll include the list. However, going right here and right-clicking, you can also see adverb, negative, particle, negative. So right-clicking the word will give you a breakdown of what that is. The more you use it, the more you'll become familiar with the terms. Just like on Bible Hub, it's the same way. You have to be familiar with the parsing terms to really get any benefit out of them. Now, one of the awesome things here is, like I said, you can toggle these on and off. So I can turn off the morphology. I can turn off the lemma. I can leave just the English literal translation on, and I can create sort of my own custom interlinear. I only have Greek and English now. I can almost completely just read across, straight across. Now again, it's an interlinear that's based on the Greek text, so it's going to follow the Greek word order, which is generally not how we would read it in English. But I can do that. Or let's say that I don't want the literal value at all. Well, now I have just a Greek text. I can also add in my manuscript transliterated and then my English literal translation. So maybe if you don't know Greek or you're still learning it, you need help with pronouncing certain words or how it's transliterated, you can add that in. There's a lot of different helpful tools for how this works here. So again, you can toggle those, you can play with those, and decide which of these you find most helpful. Again, me, I kind of like the manuscript, I like the lexical value, and I like the morphology and the Lunida. So that's just me. So the nice thing with having the Lunida numbers on is that it ties to the Lunida, let's see, right here, the Greek English lexicon of the New Testament based on semantic domains. And the reason that I like having these turned on is because I can just hover over them. Of course, I can click it, but I can also just hover over it to get an even further and more full definition, just kind of on the fly, right? Okay. All right, so let's drag him back over here. All right, so we pretty much covered the layout of it. Again, Hebrew is the same, it's just right to left, right? So we have that. But now if you want to drill down on a word, once again, you right click it. So I'm going to right click on nomon, which is the word, comes from the word nomos. It's a form of nomos, which means law, right? And of course, he's here talking about the law and the prophets, right? Do not think that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I have not come to destroy, but to fill up or to fulfill. So here, law, again, law, law, right? It's an accusative singular masculine noun. Okay, cool, sure, whatever. But right here, the Bible sense it gives us, right? It says Torah, law, and Tanakh, law, right? Tanakh, of course, is essentially the Old Testament, right? Now this is really interesting. This is really interesting, and this is where, again, I think the Bible sense tools are often um, ignored, really to the detriment of a lot of people's studies. So here we have Torah, law, Tanakh, law. So let's go to Romans 7:22. Okay, here, right? This is Paul talking about the law. Now, of course, read through Romans 5 through 8, really, and you'll see a bunch of different ways he's using law. So we right-click this one, nomo, again, nomos, right? Same thing. Law collection. Well, now it's not saying law Torah or law Tanakh, right? It's not giving us the same thing. Now, it is a sort of understanding of, well, it's a collection of laws, requirements, commandments, that sort of thing. So you could still kind of infer from the sense here that it's talking about the Torah, right, the Mosaic law. However, in verse 23, so right here, he says, but I observe another law. Okay, let's look at that one. Principle. It's giving us the sense of principle, not collection, not Torah, right, but principle. So it notes there's some sort of contrast, and that Paul is using the word law in a way other than just the Torah, right? In a way other than just a collection of laws or commandments. Now, to be sure, these Bible sense lexicon hints, I would say, aren't always 100% accurate. I would say that that's fair even for the scholars that created this tool and the entries that go into this. I would say they would also tell you they're not 100% accurate. But in general, this is a very, very useful tool when digging in and figuring out how is this word used in this context. Because again, words have semantic domain. They have a range of meanings depending on how they're used. So that's just about it on the Greek interlinear. Again, the Lexan Hebrew interlinear works essentially the same way. It's just that it goes right to left instead of left to right. There is also, really quick, let me open this, a cool Dead Sea Scrolls interlinear. So right here, I would say go ahead and go to Deuteronomy 32:8, which is right here, this verse here, right? Just really quick, because it's kind of a fun little note on textual variants and whatnot. So we open this up. Now the parts that are dim, these are parts that are missing from the fragment that we are looking at. For example, you can see here that this is 4Q, paleo, dute, R, blah, 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 4Q, dute, J, and so on and so forth. These refer to the specific scroll, right? Because there are multiple different fragments of Deuteronomy 32, so these refer to the different scrolls that they're from. The darkened portions are the words that are missing, and the lightened portions are the words that are present in this portion of Deuteronomy. Okay, specifically in this this fragment here. But what I want to point out here is right here, these last two words, which are here in the fragments, is Bane Elohim, right? Bane Elohim. That literally means sons of God. Okay, now I have a whole teaching series on the Divine Council, and that's a whole thing over on our congregational website at Nehemiah Restoration Fellowship. But I'm not going to go over all that right now. But if you go and observe what this is in a regular Bible, it'll say sons of Israel, right? That God divided up the nations and portioned them according to the number of the sons of Israel. But here in the Dead Sea Scrolls, these two words would mean according to the number of the sons of God, right? Now that's a very fascinating, at least in my opinion, variant. And the Dead Sea Scrolls Hebrew English Interlinear Bible is a great way to dig in and to see that. See, we get into Deuteronomy 32, further verses down, and we get much larger pieces across the different manuscripts and so on. So it's really cool. It's really cool. There is an interlinear for the Septuagint as well. Now, one thing that Logos has to offer that Bible Hub does not, in addition to the standard interlinear tools, many of the top Bible translations also have an RI, or a reverse interlinear. So go back to our dashboard, open the New American Standard, and right here we can toggle on the interlinear verse text. I don't want that one. I just want that and that. Okay, now this is going to be a little bit difficult in Hebrew. So let's go ahead and go back to John 1. This will be a little bit easier to read here, just because it's still left to right and all. But here in John 1, you can see, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, not even one thing came into being that has come into being. So that's John 1, 1 through 3. Well, you can see here, the Greek terms, right, in arche, are beneath the English words. Now, it's called a reverse interlinear because it starts with English rather than starting with the Hebrew or Greek text. Now, again, it flows with the NASB order, and then it tells you, okay, well, here's the Greek word that was translated into the English that you see here. You'll notice sometimes you'll have these little arrows, and they'll point in the direction of the word that they're heading into, but they actually take the place of where perhaps there are some supplied words, right? So this article here in English, we'd say in the beginning, but the article is implied in Greek. There's not actually an article here showing the, right? We add that in because it's implied. This is a great tool. It's really cool, especially if you are still learning how to finagle the interlinear resources. It can be a little weird if you are already used to the Bible Hub interlinears, but nevertheless, here we are. That's what it is. There are reverse interlinears. They are additional resources, right? So you do have to add those on top of whatever translation you want to use. The New American Standard, the New Revised Standard, the NIV, ESV, King James, New King James, New Living, I think the Net, and a handful of others. Sadly, there is not one for the Tree of Life version. So if I open it over here, you see I don't have the interlinear toggle right here. That's not an option for the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is marked up with its footnotes and all. It does have some links and all, but it is not currently a reverse interlinear compatible translation. I am hopeful, but really it's going to have to get some more, a larger user base to get to that point. Now, if you're wondering why the reverse interlinear might be useful, you can consider if you're a first-year Greek student, right? So let's go back to Matthew 5 again. Matthew 5. So you're here, you're reading through Matthew 5, right? And you wonder what word sits under the English abolish, right? Matthew 5:17, abolish. What word sits under that, right? Well, here you can see it's katalusai, right? At a glance, you can just see, oh, that's the Greek word that underlies it. That helps you build familiarity. It helps you build vocabulary. Again, I can toggle more features on and off if I needed to or if I wanted to, as far as what I want to see. So in addition to toggling the reverse interlinear on and off, there's one more thing you can have a reverse interlinear do for you. So let's toggle it off for a second. Now, if I hover over a word, so let's see right here, again, abolish, you'll see the little tooltip at the bottom of the screen, a little pop-up, right? Kataluo, verb, aorist, active, infinitive, Strong's, Greek number 2647, Lunida 76.23, right? This shows most of the morphological information about the word over which I'm currently hovering. I get the lemma, again, the lexical form of the word. I get parsing info, such as if it's masculine, feminine, verb, noun, and so on. This, once again, applies only to Greek words. Hebrew, obviously, would have some slightly different information. It would not have a Lunida number. You could still get the Strong's number, though. So, I've demonstrated these tools, and bear in mind that many, if not most of these, are included in multiple base packages. So if you were to look up each one, you'd be thinking, geez, you expect me to pay $100 for a Greek interlinear, plus $100 for a Hebrew one, plus $80 for one of the Dead Sea Scrolls? This is nuts. And you'd be right. If you were buying every individual resource that goes into a Logos base package, you'd be spending tens of thousands of dollars for all the different resources, right? Again, you'd be right to say that's nuts. But once again, that's one of the big benefits of purchasing a base package. It bundles lots of these resources up with everything else included. So anyways, that's my spiel on that. Once again, that wraps up this video. Thanks for checking it out. Be sure to check out the links in the description. I tended to mix them up a little bit. I don't want to just just do all the same links in the same video every single time. To be fair, once again, I do recommend that you at least check out my 10th video before purchasing. It has some tips and tricks and things to keep in mind before making any individual resource purchases. If you're about to pull the trigger on a purchase, please use my link below so that I can get a very small commission. Just remember, packages and bundles, those are the way to go. So thanks for your time, and see you next time. Shalom.